Hi! Today I'm going to share the story of an encounter with God that changed the entire trajectory of my life. This testimony is really not the beginning of my journey with the Lord. I loved and believed in Jesus as a child. I enjoyed the Bible and had visions. And I even had great conversations with him growing up and through my teenage years. But like many people, I grew away from church and from God. The sweet moments with him from childhood had become non-existent. And while I still believed in the concept of God, I didn't know him. Here's what happened. A business acquaintance that I saw 3 or 4 times a year had been asking me every time I saw her to come to church for years. I always found an excuse not to go, even though there was a small part of me that wanted to. In July of 1997, she invited me again, and to breakfast beforehand, and I said yes. I said yes for 2 reasons. First, I really wanted to get to know her better, and second, I was terrified to go into the church alone, and figured if she was with me, I'd be safe. Safe from what? Well, I was quite literally convinced if I walked through the doors of a church that God would strike me with lightning. Apparently, I was more certain of his hatred for me than I was of his aim, because I assumed that if I went with someone he did love and stayed close enough to them, I'd be safe. I also had this feeling that if I went to church and survived getting through the doors, that everyone who looked at me would know I didn't belong there. I know it may sound funny, but these were real, genuine fears that had kept me away from church for years. We met for breakfast, and after the normal chit-chat, she asked me if I was a Christian. I said yes, as I ran through this mental checklist. I believe in God. I don't cuss out loud. I'm nice to people. I don't drink much. I don't smoke. I don't do illegal drugs. Yep, Christian. Her response floored me. She said, "Great, tell me about your relationship with Jesus." My first thought was, seriously? How can you have a relationship with a dead guy? I don't know whether I was more surprised by her question or by that thought. Because if you had asked me if I believed Jesus was dead, I would have adamantly insisted he was alive. But my knee-jerk reaction revealed something to me that I didn't know was even in my heart. No matter what I said, I did not have the revelation that Jesus was actually alive. I honestly don't recall the rest of the conversation. All I know for sure is that her question had ignited a flicker of hope in my heart that I had not felt in a really long time. And suddenly, inexplicably, I had to know him. I started going to church and visited a few, but nothing really captured me. No one was talking about him. And eventually, the hope grew dim again. Then, in January of 1998, I was contemplating suicide. As I sat there with the potential items for my demise on the bed, I realized I had no sense of personal worth and no value. Life was not worth living. So, I tried to figure out what would be the best way to do it with the highest likelihood of success and the least mess. Which again may sound silly. But as I was looking at everything I had laid out on my bed, 2 things happened. First, the scripture, "Thou shalt not commit murder," came to mind. And I wondered if I would go straight to hell, or if God would give me a chance to explain myself, as if he didn't already know. The second thing was the voice of my friend coming to me again. "Tell me about your relationship with Jesus." I know my prayer was probably nothing more than a quiet whisper through tears. I'm positive I didn't yell it out. But I remember the words clearly as if I had just spoken them. God, if you are really real and you want this life, you can have it. Before the words were even off my lips, it felt like liquid love was poured into the room. I don't have another way to describe it. And suddenly I was wrapped in the most wonderful, pure, warm hug that I had ever known. And I knew in that instance that God was real, that Jesus was alive, and that they loved me. And for some reason beyond my comprehension, they wanted me and my life. I meant something to God. And everything inside changed. None of my circumstances changed. But everything inside changed to the reality and revelation that I was wanted and loved. So today, I'm going to ask you a question. Tell me about your relationship with Jesus. If you can't, it's okay. I couldn't. It took over a year for me to be able to answer the question, to even believe that it was a question worth answering. And in that time, I've discovered that I am the dream of God's heart. That He envisioned something very specific, something beautiful and magnificent when He created me. And He did the same when He created you. A dream that is yours alone in His heart. So I hope that whether you can answer the question or not, this stirs something in your heart today. The possibility of getting to know Him and getting to know who you are to Him.